All right, so welcome to the lecture tonight. It is on doing ketosis and other areas of nutritional changes and how that might affect sleep. So sometimes if you've done a low carb diet before, or if you've done other things, you might have noticed that you actually had poor sleep. Other people notice that they have improved sleep. So there sometimes becomes a lot of confusion as to what exactly might have been the reason and what was going on. And should I do these diets, or should I just go home and eat a Big Mac and go to bed happily, right? So this is looking to address some of those questions, when some of those improvements and when some of those problems actually happen and why, and get you the education on when you should change things. So I actually kind of drew this. I had Julia draw it up here tonight for us. So this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I just love this when we're talking about sleep and when we're talking about nutrition, because at the base foundation of Maslow's hierarchy of needs are our physiological needs. So those contain food, water, warmth, and rest. So tonight we're really talking about all four of these components, right? Because we're adding in sleep as a primary component of our health and of our nutritional health. So getting not only the quality water and quality foods right, but the quantities right, so that can be ketosis and fasting along with that, help promote our body's ability to actually go into a rested state. And then if you look on up this, once we have these in place, we can truly start to achieve security and safety and wake up in the morning and know that we're safe to be, go beyond just these basic needs. Then we have things like belongingness and relationships. We can do well with others here, right? So if you've ever had some of these areas out of balance in your life, you might notice that relationships might not be thriving, right? Whether that's work relationships, friendships, family. Here's where we really start to feel accomplished, when we have all of these other areas in place. And here we're really reaching our full potential. So this is where life gets artistic, where you start feeling like, you wake up and you start changing your diet and it becomes a game. And you're really starting to feel that even if you're working on some of these, you're doing it and you're making it fun. So I'm trying to help you in all of these, but especially by getting these right tonight. So I read this book, The Circadian Code, which is really cool. And if you like some of the stuff that I talk about tonight that deals with environmental changes and other things that you can do besides your nutrition, that's just a really fun book. So he talks in this book about a biological rhythm and having a healthy biological rhythm. And so he says, if you don't have a healthy biological rhythm, that's one of the indications that some things are out in your life. So this is to help you determine if sleep is something that you really need to work on. So he talks about waking up in the morning and feeling awake and energized to get out of bed, and getting out of bed then and eliminating. So typically by about 9 o'clock in the morning, we should be having a bowel movement. Our body should be eliminating the toxins that it's gathered throughout the evening. So then we should be getting hungry, right? Our cortisol should be spiking. We should be getting a little bit of stress, ready to go for the day, and getting hungry, feeling like we need to fuel our bodies. So beyond that, we should eat, we should go ahead, we should get our day started, have the energy, the brain power to do so. And then as our day continues, we should get hungry again in the afternoon, right? So we should have that afternoon hunger. We should be refueling our bodies. We should then be still active in our mind, active in our muscles. And then by nighttime, our digestion starts to reduce, right? So we should be on a wind down process here. Maybe we skip our dinner and don't have dinner. Our body starts preparing itself actually for bed. And so if we're still doing things like feeding our bodies, especially eating like high carbohydrate foods, or if we're going out and being busy, we're kind of going against that basic circadian rhythm and against that basic biological rhythm of our body. So really, you should be preparing yourself for bed, getting ready to go to bed, and falling asleep easily, staying asleep easily without needing to urinate, without needing to get up and be hungry, because our digestion should be suppressed at that point because our body's resting and healing. Our need to eat should, be diminished. Our need to urinate and defecate should be diminished because our body should be able to gather toxins and do that during the daytime while we're awake. So he mentions too, that's why babies, they haven't quite got their biological rhythms down yet when they're first born. And that's why they keep waking up. They can't make it through the night. They can't make it through the day being awake because they're really learning and setting their biological rhythms. So tonight we're going to talk about if you've identified some of those biological rhythms as being out of their top performance, how can you improve those through nutrition and through other means as well? So factors that can impair and improve your sleep. So if we're just looking at just rest, so this can come down to lifestyle factors, right? So if you consider that pretty much everyone in the United States, and if you're not in the United States, other countries are kind of behaving in the same manner, but not everyone, that we're not taking our vacation time, we're not taking time for ourselves and for our families, for our friends, and we're really motivated by accomplishments, which is great, right? So, but we really need to step back and look at the whole picture. We talk about, mind and body health and everything. And when we're talking about nutritional health, this does mean taking time for you and time to go and choose your foods and not buy everything prepackaged, and cooking your foods, potentially even growing your foods. So getting back to taking enough time for your body and your health that you're paying attention to those levels of things and really allowing yourself time to enjoy life and experience it. So a lot of us too live in loud environments. So loud environments, bright environments, we've got our devices going, we've got our phones. So many of the lights now emit a bright blue light, which helps to wake us up, right? Yeah. So before, we never had things on. If you remember the days when television in America went to gray, like black and white flickers at midnight, everything turned off and it didn't turn on again the next morning until 5 or 6 in the morning. So with cable, things like that changed, but even before, so decades ago, we were kind of forced to go to sleep and not watch television because of the fact that it was turned off for us at that point. So temperature, our bodies actually sleep better in a cool temperature. So if you're someone who likes to leave the window open for cool air or turn the air on at night or turn the heat down, that's perfectly normal. What I always recommend too is doing something like wearing lighter pajamas if you wear pajamas to bed, so that way your body's not getting hot and overheated in the nighttime, which can disrupt sleep as well. Even turning around clocks so that they're faced away from you so that you're not getting that bright light. More modern clocks are actually coming out with blue lights on the numbers now. So if you're getting a new clock, invest in something that has red lights so it doesn't stop your melatonin from producing. The red lights are not as irritating to our brain as blue lights are. So poor exercise. So in here, exercise is a contributing factor. It helps our body's ability to regulate. So if you think of our nervous system constantly regulating between fight and flight and resting and healing. So when we exercise, we kind of put our body into a little bit more fight or flight mode. And then when we relax, we go into resting and healing. Exercise also helps with things like digestion support. It also helps with circulation and lymphatics. And it also helps with our balance to actually just make us tired, right? Utilize some of the nutrients that we've used to be able to make us tired and ready to detoxify and cleanse as we sleep, rather than trying to digest our food and utilize the energy that we did eat. So poor diets. Poor diets can keep us up at night, not just because we regret what we did during the daytime, but more so because of the fact that in our intestines, we have nervous system signals about what's going on and whether or not we should be perceiving stress. Sometimes even pain. If you've ever overeaten, you might have had that bloated feeling, and the only reason that we can feel pain is because of nervous system receptors that recognize pain. So when you feel that pain and discomfort, or if you've eaten something that's just really moving slowly through your digestive tract, your nervous system is aware of that, and that can keep you awake at night. So making sure that you're not eating foods that make you feel bloated. Sometimes I love to enjoy a good bowl of chili, but if it's loaded with beans, that's something that really gives me indigestion. And then it's also something that does impair my sleep because I'm tossing and turning and I can't get comfortable. Carb overloads. So carb overloads, they not only kill the gut, they not only impair the gut, but they also are giving our body lots of energy. So if you're carb overloading late at night especially, that's something that can definitely have an impact on your sleep, both by giving you energy and making you want to wake up and get up and burn it off, and then also by the fact that your digestion is naturally slowing at night, and so it's not going to work its way through your system very well. So always remember this when it comes to eating. We eat to energize, right? So during the daytime, during the morning, we should be eating. During the afternoon, we should be eating. Potentially, if it's falling into the right category for you, you might be fasting by nighttime. You might be applying something like intermittent fasting, which is a way of eating. Ketosis, which we'll talk about too, is a way of eating. It's not addressing the qualities of your food like an anti-candida diet or like a paleo diet would address the qualities. Intermittent fasting addresses quantities and how often you eat, and the ketosis diet addresses the amounts of foods that you're eating, so your macronutrients, proteins, carbs, and fats. So all of these will kind of go into and how they can help and hinder sleep. So being inconsistent. So inconsistent with your schedule, whether that's your sleep schedule, your preparing for bed schedule, your work schedule, or if it even deals with things like, working a shift or being a mother who has to wake up in the middle of the night to take care of a baby. So in this book called the Circadian Code, they actually named off a bunch of different types of shift workers. The author says he believes that everyone is a shift worker, whether it's a matter of, actually working what we consider to be a night shift, or if you're someone who works really hard all week long and, whatever your job is, if it's taking care of the baby and then, you're not having to take care of the baby on the weekend because you leave the baby with your mom, but that would be like shift work in the sense that you have to wake up all night to take care of the baby. Or if you're someone who works hard during the weekdays and sleeps in on the weekends. So if you're doing like a 3-hour catch up on the weekends and you're sleeping in a few hours extra to make up for your weekdays, he considers that social shift work, where you're socially changing your circadian rhythm to try and adapt to the stressors of life, really. And so essentially, according to him, we're all shift workers, and we should all be a little more cognizant of the demands that we're placing on our body that are against our biological rhythm, right? So, and then finally, stimulants. We'll talk a little bit about stimulants tonight and the fact that those can really change, especially in some diets like ketosis. People tend to do lots of fat-burning coffees, which can be great, but sometimes they can also then cause a little bit of energy overcharge and, stimulation at nighttime. So, as a recap, infants actually need 16 hours of sleep. So teens and young adults actually need 9 hours, and adults should have 7 to 8 hours of sleep. If you're getting less than that, you're not giving your body enough time to rest and heal. And if you're getting more than that, specifically when adults have had more than 9 hours of sleep in a night, it can be a sign of dysfunction, whether that's organ dysfunction in the body, can be things like thyroid, endocrine, or even nervous system dysfunction or gastrointestinal dysfunction, and it can even be a sign of disease. So if you're sleeping too much, it's not good either. You want to be in that beautiful zone of 7 to 8 hours. Now, I have met some people who they're at their prime of their life and they're on 6.5 hours or they're on 9 hours. So sometimes you can go outside of these norms, right? Don't get yourself all scared about anything. If you feel great and you're outside of the norms, then that's good. If you don't feel great and you're outside of some of these norms, it just means that potentially there's something you can change in order to make your body work even better. Sometimes I get this question, so it's, do I need sleep? Isn't that for lazy people, right? Shouldn't we be performing and achieving? So I didn't write it down, but there was a study, I believe it was in the 1980s, and they had projected that because of advancements with computers and, things that we were, so new to in the 80s, that by the year 2000, we would only be working less than 30 hours a week because we wouldn't need to be at our jobs as long because all of the activities that we would do in a work cycle would have been reduced by computers. So the great part is computers have, made a lot of things quicker, but then we've also utilized that time to analyze data, collect data, and do more work. So we tend to be working more rather than less, which is good, but we do still need our sleep. So we have evolved on the fact that we're sleeping with our circadian rhythm and going to sleep at night, allowing our bodies time to rest and heal. So sleeping is not for lazy people. Sleeping is actually very active. So our brains don't turn off at night when we sleep. Our brains are actually in a point of healing, pulling our memories from the day and our emotions from the day, organizing those, banking them in different areas of the brain so that we can have better brain capacity to function the following day. So if you're thinking that sleep is just for someone who's weak, or the typical saying of "I'll sleep when I'm dead," you might be getting yourself to that goal a little bit sooner if you're not getting your amount of sleep between, whatever your age is, but typically speaking to adults, 7 to 8 hours per night. So this one, I printed this off and I didn't do it in color, and we're still working on getting our projector set up, but once that's all done, we'll have these in color. So this is just how much sleep do I need, and it shows you a little visual of what a typical night would look like. So this right here is REM sleep, so rapid eye movement. That's when you're dreaming. That's when you can actually hear an alarm clock, get awakened by thunder or by noises outside. And then these two areas right here and right here, these are deep delta wave sleep. And this is on an 8-hour scale. And it does demonstrate for you that we go into that deep restorative sleep in the first 4 hours of sleep, and we really don't continue to hit that. We go into a different mode of sleep in the last 4 hours of sleep. So it's actually really important that we do get to sleep by 10 o'clock is ideal. That's when our body's natural rhythm is to actually get into that deep delta wave sleep where immune functions, skin functions, human growth hormone is actually produced in that deep delta wave sleep. So human growth hormone, about 80% of our human growth hormone is produced in that delta wave sleep. So without that repair time, then we're really robbing our bodies of what we need to stay healthy. So this one was just another picture that I printed off. I didn't like it as well, so I didn't bother with it. So muscles and bones, they heal from trauma during that time. So if you're someone who's exercising, yes, you need sleep too. So you're exercising, you're actually tearing your muscles, right? Your muscle fibers when you exercise. So you need sleep to be able to go ahead and repair those muscle fibers. Skin and connective tissues also repair. So if you've had like an injury, or if you notice that you've been getting poor sleep and you feel more sore, those two things can be related. So I like mentioning this because it's so important. Oftentimes when you haven't had a good night's sleep, you might feel like you're crashing on your nutritional goals the next day. And it really is, it has everything to do with our hormones. So our hormones, one hormone is cortisol. So cortisol, just after a night of impaired sleep, it increases. So that's our stress hormone. So we get stressed and we tend to respond by doing things like not preparing dinner or not preparing lunch for the day because we didn't get enough sleep, and then we'll just go and eat out. So we kind of set ourselves up for failure, and then we feel more stressed out as well. So ghrelin levels are our hunger hormone. So these also increase. So not only do we think that we feel more hungry, but we are, because our hormones are actually telling us to get more energy because of the fact that we didn't restore our body and prepare for our day. So leptin levels, so this is our body fat regulation hormone, and it decreases. So this is why fat loss and weight loss can be difficult if you're not getting proper sleep, because leptin levels decrease with impaired sleep. So insulin secretion decreases. So this is our blood sugar regulation hormone. And so if it's not signaling appropriately, it doesn't help us to suppress our appetite. So we're feeling hungry and hungry and hungry because insulin isn't getting its job done. And so this is just one more factor why we eat more. We're tending to gravitate towards sugary, refined foods, and not just eat like 1 or 2 wholesome prepared foods on a day after poor sleep. So melatonin is another hormone. So melatonin is a hormone that it's produced when it gets dark. So when we're in a darker room like this, or then throughout the day, we're in different types of settings where the darkness is more and more, and where blue light is not present. So blue lights on our phones, blue lights on our iPads and our tablets and our computers, all of these things trigger the brain to not produce melatonin. And as soon as we're in a dark room, then that trigger reduces and we start to produce melatonin, which helps us to fall asleep. So some people say, well, can't I just take melatonin? Well, because melatonin is a hormone, you don't really want to take it. Although it's seen as natural in most places, I still say whenever you're taking a hormone, you're disrupting your body's understanding of what it should be doing, because you're chemically signaling it, right? So melatonin on a short term, especially if you're traveling or you're experiencing stress and you're just not sleeping, so rest is vital. We have to sleep, right? So melatonin on a short term can be not so bad for you. I'm looking for a different word than bad, but I'm just saying it's not as bad for you. But melatonin over a long period of time, you really want to look at, are you not getting the amino acids that are precursors to our neurotransmitters and our hormones, which would create melatonin. So you really want to look at what can you do to help your body create these naturally. At the end, I've got a list of foods for you of the things that help these precursor hormones. So melatonin, not only does it help us to fall asleep, but then in the morning when it gets light out, it helps us to awaken. So this is one of the factors of our circadian rhythm. It's why when people live in Alaska, sometimes they get out of sync on their cycles. But certainly we can get our levels set and reset them, because if you've ever traveled across time zones, you might notice that it takes you a day or two to kind of reset your body clock, and you can successfully reset your body clock to the new time zone that you're in. But then when you travel back home, you kind of go through that reset again. And again, that's stress on your body. So you want to be able to make sure that you're supporting your body to handle those stressors. So bright light actually modulates serotonin. That's a feel-good hormone. So when you're up and during the day too, make sure that your room is bright. Make sure that you're opening the curtains. Or when you first wake up in the morning, if you have a hard time getting going, one of the ways that you can actually start to prepare yourself for better sleep is by getting outside first thing in the morning. Take your dog for a walk, take yourself for a walk, go for a run, go for a jog, do whatever you have to do to get yourself out of your house and in that little amount of sunlight or large amount of sunlight to be able to get that bright light. Truly, when we're outside, is one of the brightest lights that we can experience. And even when we're inside and we have all of the lights on, it's a real diminished level of light that doesn't help us to get that excited, awakened feeling and sense. So how can ketosis help, right? So now we know all of these things that we can do to help our sleep, change our environment, but how can my nutrition help, and how can it hinder it? So think of it like this. If you've been having a long-term chronic sleep problem, so if you're someone who can't fall asleep since the last 2 decades, then ketosis might be something that will help for you. If you're someone who's having hot flashes at night and that's waking you up out of a good sleep, then ketosis might help you. If you're someone who's having problems with feeling like you need to urinate in the middle of the night, you always wake up because you have to go to the bathroom, then ketosis might help you. So I'll tell you why, but first I'm going to tell you when ketosis might hinder you. So if you're someone who has been doing a low carb diet and you find yourself waking up, and you find yourself getting to bed, and then suddenly you're awake, you're stimulated, and you can't fall asleep, ketosis might not be the right thing for you, or changing your routine to add a nighttime snack, which you'll want to work away from, but that might be something that you have to add in. So a lot of times we're working toward intermittent fasting and we're not eating around nighttime, or we're skipping our morning breakfast and we're eating at night right before bed. So all of these things might be things that you have to look at and adjust if it's not working for you. So in general, if you're not doing a ketosis diet and you've got chronic long-term problems, ketosis can actually help those problems. So the reason that is because I talked a little bit about how carbohydrates, they're a fuel for our body, right? So if you're living on a standard American diet and you're having sleep issues, chances are you're overfueling your body and you're giving it the improper type of fuel right before bedtime. So if you go on to a ketosis diet, which is where we're not burning sugar or carbohydrates as our primary fuel as glucose, but we're burning fat or ketones. So fat and ketones do put our body in a little bit of fight or flight status, but they burn over a longer period of time. And so it's just a more stable energy for our bodies. So if you're having those chronic issues, to get rid of that insulin problem, those fluctuations with hormones, actually getting into ketosis can be helpful. Also, when you're first getting into ketosis, our insulin does trigger our body actually to hold on to more fluids. So if you're that person who is waking up in the middle of the night and you feel like you need to go to the bathroom a lot, when you first start to get into ketosis, you might notice that suddenly you start to urinate more and more and more heavily throughout the day, but then things normalize for you. And it's because your body is actually pushing some of that fluid from the muscles. The insulin is driving it out, and so you're urinating more. So it's important too to make sure that early in the day you stay well hydrated if you are doing a ketosis diet. So hydration is different for every person. Some people go by the rule of thumb, which is for your body weight, you drink half of that in ounces of water. So that's just a number to go for. So if you're 120 pounds, you might be drinking 60 ounces of water. If you're 200 pounds, you might be drinking 100 ounces of water. Make sure that water is good and clean. Make sure it's filtered. If you're drinking things like tap water or water that's out of plastic bottles that have been sitting in the heat, sometimes those can have lots more toxins in them. So when you're actually cleansing your body and flushing it, you want to make sure you've got a good filter. Here we use the Berkey filters, so they really get all the toxins and all the pathogens out of the water, the fungus, the chemicals, all of that will be eliminated. But more importantly, you want to make sure that you're getting good minerals in your water. So making sure that you're either using some Celtic sea salt or Redmond's Real Salt. Those are the two companies that, if you've ever been to my talks before or seen them, you know that I stick by those two salts just because they have good gathering procedures. They don't add anti-caking agents. So you get the full spectrum of minerals in those salts, and you're not getting any of the toxic burdens that are not added to those salts. So putting a pinch of that in your water will help to remineralize and rehydrate your body better. So if you think of these drinks that we have like Pediasure and Pedialyte or Gatorade, those are just toxic, right? They're filled with colors and they're filled with sweeteners, and really we don't need any of that, and it doesn't even taste good. So really what you want to be doing is just adding that pinch of salt to your water, and that is nature's way of rehydrating yourself. So if you're someone who's going into the diet and you're experiencing those improvements, continue on with it. Then there's no reason to go to the opposite, which is what I'm going to explain now. So to recap that, if you're new to keto, or if you've been in ketosis and you're feeling better, then that's good. You don't have to make any of these changes. So, but if you've been in ketosis now for a while or on a low carbohydrate diet, maybe you're not technically in ketosis, but you've been eating low carb and you've been noticing that you have nighttime hunger or that you have nighttime anxiety or that you go to lay down and suddenly your mind is just racing and you feel awake. So two things can be going on. Number one, if you're getting to sleep fine, but you're waking up earlier than you used to, it can just be that your body's actually running on a better fuel and that you can, try to adjust to less sleep. So if it's something in a healthy rhythm and you're waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning, but you used to wake up at 7 o'clock and it's just in your brain that you would like to sleep later, maybe your body just doesn't need all that sleep anymore and you've made a healthy change. On the other hand, if you have been getting to sleep with difficulty, right? So if you're laying down, you're eating low carb, and you now feel like you're having sweats or you're having anxiety is probably the most common thing. Then what I want you to do is make sure, number one, that you're counting your macronutrients in a system like Chronometer. So Chronometer is going to help you to know exactly how many fat grams, carbohydrate grams, and protein grams that you're eating in a daily basis. So what I find as the temporary immediate solution to this anxiety-produced low carb or ketogenic diet is to go and have a very small amount of protein or even potentially a carbohydrate snack. When you do that, it's going to allow your body to create insulin. So that's going to allow us to actually help get into sleep. And then also it's going to create a little bit more of a parasympathetic resting and healing instead of that sympathetic fight or flight, which our body can be in when we're going into ketosis. So if you've been doing this for 5 days and you're just starting to experience this 1 or 2 days, push through it. Go eat some fat, right? Because you're actually just in a keto adaptation mode where your body's trying to get into ketosis. But if you've been doing this for a number of weeks and you're really experiencing this difficulty falling asleep over and over and over, and it's been many days and you know you're in ketosis, then that's the point where you would add in this small carbohydrate or small protein snack late at night. Now, continuing that, you would do this for a couple weeks or even a month of eating the small carbohydrate or small protein snack before bedtime. But ideally, you want to correct your total diet and you want to correct your behavior. And the way that you do that then is by looking at the grams of protein or carbs that you've eaten late at night and move them up in your window so that your body is getting that energy earlier in the day, not right before sleep, and that your body is able to regulate and then go back into a bigger window of fasting prior to sleep, because that is important. And actually just move those protein grams or those carbohydrate grams to earlier in the daytime once you've had some successful nights of sleep. So going back to this, rest is one of those most important things. So if we're not resting because we're doing a great diet, or potentially I've had patients who are so concerned with maintaining their weight loss, so they've started a ketogenic diet. Over the couple months period of time, they've lost some weight, and the last thing that they want to do is add in some protein or carbohydrates because they're fearful of the weight gain that could potentially go with it. But what I'll say is if you're not willing enough to play the game a little bit of adding those in to get the sleep, the weight gain will come if you don't get the rest, right? So if you put your body through so much strain for a long enough period of time, the weight gain will come because of the fact that you're not able to get through that cycle of that delta wave sleep, which is where we actually can eliminate extra fat and prepare the body for that healing status. So add something in. When I'm talking about adding a small snack, I mean something like a little piece of turkey, right? We're not adding in a whole meal. So add in a little piece of turkey, maybe a little bit of hummus, just a food that might be easy to eat, something that you don't have to cook and prepare and turn on the lights and be completely stimulated by, but something that can be small and readily available to you, and something that you can track easily too as to how well it did for you. So if you're someone who gets night sweats, so particularly women, I find, get night sweats more than men do, and particularly if they drink wine. So if you're someone who's getting night sweats or has had them in the past, go for more of a protein as your nighttime snack instead of a carbohydrate. So that protein will burn a little bit longer and it won't quite spike the glucose as much as a fruit snack or something like a carbohydrate that would come from a fruit or a vegetable. If you're someone who is feeling lightheaded, dizzy, kind of adrenally, like, you feel that, you feel weak by the end of the night, then potentially you need to add both some carbohydrates and some protein back in. So, and that's going to be up to you to really start tracking that throughout your daytime and looking at your daily macronutrients, the carbs, protein, and fat grams. Because without that information, it's funny, but you'll almost be likely to continue to fail, right? Because you have to have that information. You're gearing yourself by gathering the information of how much of those macronutrients you eat when you feel wonderful, and how little or how out of balance they might be on the days where you have that disrupted sleep. And that's the way that you can really gain control of adding only maybe 5 grams of protein, and then you notice you get a better night's sleep. And so then that way you can start to add those small amounts of grams in without starting to disrupt things like weight gain, right? So that's why that is important. So if you're doing something like I mentioned, even if you're not doing intermittent fasting where you're shortening the window of eating, you want to make sure for health reasons that you're not eating snacks beyond a 12-hour eating window. So it's documented in many studies that eating beyond a 12-hour eating window can actually create disease and dysfunction in the body. So because we're not allowing the body that resting status. So if you're looking at, if you're eating in a 12-hour window and now you're adding a snack to go to sleep, and because you're doing low carb or ketosis, then you're not doing something right, okay? So you have to get back to the drawing board, really get help from a professional, call us, get on our schedules. You have to get help in getting your fat grams up or your protein grams up or protein and carbohydrates down, because something's not going right if it's causing that much of a behavior in your body at the point where you've been doing this for a long time, right? So, and over such a big window. So think of making these nutritional changes like a game, right? So if you get frustrated with making nutritional changes, or if you fear something, right? So often I run into people being afraid of gaining weight or having the outcomes that they got rid of by starting a ketogenic or a low carb diet. They're afraid to change things up down the road, but really it's necessary. We have to play this like a game. You have to increase protein at times. You have to increase carbs at times. And so if you're simply not having high carb days, that will cause a problem, just like eating high carbs all the time and not having fasting or ketogenic days will cause a problem. So you really have to do that. And then the question is, well, how often? So if you're doing something like battling a disease, if you're battling epilepsy, or if you're battling, Parkinson's, or, you name it, right? You might need to be in ketosis quite a bit of the time and only have high carb days 4 to 8 times per year. But if you're doing ketosis just because you were sluggish and your mental energy was, drifting and you wanted to lose 5 pounds, then you might have high carb days once a week, right? So, and your body will need that. You'll start to diminish in your own performance, like things like not getting good sleep after a couple months of doing hardcore ketosis without those high carb, high fuel days. So just consider that, really looking at things of what are your body's needs as far as what are you doing with it. Because certainly, even if you go back in our ancestors and look, people who were doing a natural diet that was just naturally ketogenic, then in the summertime, like if my grandpa, he was probably basically eating ketogenic. You know, he had meat and he had potatoes, but he was just eating once or twice a day. And so even if the ratios were a little bit out of balance, his intermittent fasting was throwing him into ketosis. But then when the summertime would come and our pear trees would have pears and our grapes would be on the vines, and you know, we had a big farm at my grandparents' house, so we'd come in with all of those fruits and he would eat those fruits. But it was for such a short period of time throughout the year that we would have that. So it is natural, and just make sure that you kind of focus on making those variations as you need to. So adding, ketosis, or adding intermittent fasting, or adding a snack to those if you've already been doing them and struggling with sleep, can be things that help your sleep and sleep functions. So if you're still having some difficulties, some of the things, so I call this my good sleep checklist. So these are the things that you should be going through on your checklist mentally and with your practitioner to find out, what can I do to help my sleep even more if it's an ongoing problem. So minerals, make sure that you're getting good minerals either by the way of salt, as I had mentioned, or by taking supplementation. Some good mineral supplements are organically bound minerals and Mintran. Those are two very common ones. And a third one that we use often is called Natural Calm. It's a magnesium supplement and it stirs up in water. So any of those three are going to be very commonly used here at our center, and they're things that if you're waking up and you're having, leg cramps, that can be a sign that you're mineral deficient. Maybe you've been doing ketosis, but you've eliminated all of that excess fluids and you're a little bit dehydrated, so you need the water plus you need some minerals for your muscles. Make sure that your environment is set up for sleep, right? So don't expect that you're going to read the latest news on your iPad, be preparing yourself for tomorrow and mentally stimulating your mind, and then you figure you're going to turn everything off and, within a half hour fall asleep. Our brains have not evolved that way. It's newer that we're kind of demanding these stressors are something that we do and something that we just adapt to. So our bodies aren't quite there yet. So allow yourself to put those bright lights away, dim the lights at home, turn your iPads off, turn all of those things off hours before you go to sleep, a minimum of 1 hour. You might find that if you're still struggling with sleep issues, you have to do things like not eat 6 hours before bed, no coffee beyond 8 a.m., no bright lights beyond 6 p.m. When I talk about bright lights, I'm talking about the bright blue lights, the phones, the iPads, the computers. Or go and look on the internet. There are different programs you can put on your computers to actually change the screen to from a blue light to an orange light. So you can adapt your devices that way. But I was just saying, if you can take the best control of your body and kind of get rid of some of those devices, you allow your brain time to reorganize. It's not just the light, right? So you're allowing your brain time to reorganize and to rest and heal as well. So some supplements that if you have these at home, they can be helpful for adrenal type of sleep problems. So if you're getting anxious, if you're lay down in bed and you start to think about tomorrow and plan out your day, it's normal if we're just like doing a checklist in our head, right? But it's another thing if you're actually like getting yourself wound up and you can't fall asleep because you're thinking about too many things. So if you have supplements like Cataplex G, Drenamin, Simplex M or Simplex F can be really good supportive supplements to our adrenals and to our endocrine system. So they can help to balance hormones and help us actually get to sleep. So another thing that I like to include in this is just read a book. So sometimes actually getting your mind off of the, stressing, stimulating thoughts that are going through your head, reading an actual paper book, not getting it out on your iPad, but just sitting down and reading a book so that you can take your brain into more of a healing space and then also allow your mind and your eyes and your brain that reduction from stress from lights. Oftentimes I notice that when I read a book, if there are things I have less understanding of it, it really puts me to sleep. So I have to wake up in the morning and figure out the things I didn't understand so that I can actually, read it and follow it, but then I keep on reading new information. So if you find that you can never study well, you might read a book to go to bed, because as soon as you stop understanding the information, you're likely to fall asleep. So we talked about temperature and then about keeping a routine. So I mentioned in that book that, if you don't have a routine, or if your routine is that you act differently on the weekends and you sleep in, those things can alter your body's natural rhythm. And that goes with eating food too, right? Some people, if you're the person who you can intermittent fast and then you eat breakfast and lunch for 2 days, and then you eat lunch and dinner for the next 2 days, you do one meal a day the day following, and your body is resilient enough to go through that, don't make these changes, right? If your body has that resilience, that's great. It's if your body doesn't have that resilience, then you want to get, on more of a standard track where you always eat breakfast and always eat lunch and eat a small dinner, or maybe you're skipping dinner to allow the body to go into that cleansing phase and that resting phase, and not being trying to digest foods when our digestive tract is reduced in its capacity to work, right? So when we're sleeping, we're not supposed to be digesting foods. Our brain is supposed to be healing in our nervous system and tissues. And so we're going to go through some of the foods that can actually cause some disruption. So ham, bacon, sausages, cheese, chocolate, tomatoes, all these foods can actually have a histamine reaction in your body. So if you think of eating these foods late at night, or especially at dinner time, so if you think of taking an antihistamine, it really makes you sleepy. So histamine is like a central nervous system disruptor, right? It kind of wakens us up. So if you're eating these foods that can cause high histamine levels in the body, they can be things that actually wake you up. So that list is ham, bacon, sausages, cheese, chocolate, and tomatoes. Sometimes canned meats can actually do that to you also. Foods that have additives, preservatives, colorings, these can irritate your nervous system by irritating your gut. So you just want to make sure that you're staying away from those sorts of foods. Refined carbohydrates, I know I've mentioned it before, but they are producing energy in your body. So sugars, refined carbs, any of those simple foods that you really want to go to for a nighttime snack, they're probably going to cause the opposite type of disruption by impairing the gut's function, and also by giving you energy. So that's also, if you have hot flashes, you might notice on the nights where you eat that, graham cracker as a snack, or you eat that little thing that seems so, maybe neutral, but that might be the night where you wake up and you had a hot flash in the middle of the night because you ate that real refined sugar. So avoid things like smoking, any stimulants, right? Smoking, coffee, candies, anything that's going to have a stimulating effect on the body, that will definitely be something that can impair your body's ability to cleanse, rest, and heal. So good foods, on the other hand, that you can eat for sleep include things like bananas, chickpeas, and fish, which have vitamin B6 in them, which is needed to make melatonin. So I would not recommend eating a whole banana, as that's going to be about 20 carbs, and that's going to be extremely energizing. But at that point, if you're someone who does better with a small carbohydrate, literally taking a banana and cutting off one little end of it, so you've got about 5 carbohydrates, right? It's a very small snack. That's one way to balance your life too. If you say, I love bananas, I can't believe on this ketosis diet, I can't eat carbs anymore. And the fact is, you will be eating carbs. It's just the amounts of carbohydrates that you're eating. So chickpeas, I've never just run around eating chickpeas, but I do mention that I like to eat hummus. So I make up some hummus and I keep that in my refrigerator. I'll just, sometimes if I'm having trouble sleeping due to stress and due to other demands, I'll just take a little teaspoon of hummus. It's not that much energy. It doesn't cause a battle of the bulge with weight for me, but it can be something that in a short term helps out. Fish is one that I like to eat smoked fish, but I avoid the smoked fish at night. So I only typically eat fresh fish if it's like a nighttime snack to be able to get to bed. Tart cherry juice. So this will be less sugar, but if you feel like you just want something easy, you can take a couple tablespoons of tart cherry juice. Cherry juice is actually also another precursor to melatonin. Dates, figs, tuna, and turkey all contain tryptophan. So they help our body to use tryptophan, which is relaxing to our central nervous system, right? So if you've ever on Thanksgiving had the post-turkey, feeling sleepy and tired, that could have been from all the tryptophan in your turkey. So green leafy vegetables like kale, so these can be very calcium rich. So oftentimes at night, if I am experiencing that difficulty of getting to sleep, I'll actually go and saute up some spinach or some kale with a little bit of fat. So that way I have that little bit of carbohydrate, but I also get the calcium, which helps to get relaxation to your muscles. And also the fat then will help you keep burning in ketosis and keep you sleeping well throughout the night. So some good drinks that you could have for good nighttime sleep would include chamomile tea. So this has a sedating effect on our body. And so it can just help with relaxation, especially if you're someone who's got a lot of mind worry. Chamomile can be relaxing for that. Peppermint tea can help you if you've got that digestion upset. So maybe you had some foods that didn't settle right with you. You don't want to eat more foods and you're really not sure what to do. Go and make some peppermint tea. That can have a relaxing effect on the digestive system, which then won't cause that nervous system disruption or awareness. And it can just help you to get to sleep better if digestion is the problem. Kava tea can have like a sedative type of effect on the body. And then almond milk can increase tryptophan and magnesium, and chia seeds can have tryptophan. So if you've ever done something like making a chia seed pudding, which is simply chia seeds mixed with almond milk, you let those seeds plump up. So taking a couple tablespoons of that, which is going to be low on any glycemic index, it's going to be low carbohydrate, have some protein in it, but that's a really good nighttime snack that I choose to use if I need a nighttime snack for bed. And finally, another good drink is salt in water. And if you find that you're getting those muscle cramps, add a little bit of apple cider vinegar and potentially even a little bit of lemon juice to it. And that the acid can help to make your leg cramps feel better as well. So just to recap, if you are having difficulty sleeping after doing a ketosis type of diet, add in the snack, add in whether it's a drink as a snack or a small amount of food as a snack. Track how much of it you're eating, and initially you'll add it into the nighttime to be able to fall asleep, but then over time you're going to move it up to a smaller, shorter mealtime window. If you're someone who's having lots of anxiety attacks or panic attacks, you might actually fall into what I call like a little bit of an adrenal case, where you actually need 3 full meals a day, and so intermittent fasting might not be for you. Even full on ketosis might not be for you because of the way that ketosis and intermittent fasting can increase our sympathetic nervous system. So if you're having trouble with that, add those 3 meals. If you feel better with 3 meals, stick with it. There will be a point in your life where you can do these other types of variations to your diet. When it comes to essential oils, one of my favorite essential oils to add in is lavender. So if you are looking at essential oils for diffusing, I like to put lavender on the soles of my feet, even on my wrists to be able to sleep better. When I get an earache, I actually start adding lavender right behind my ears to help out with an earache, just because of the antimicrobial things that can help out with. So if my dog is up at night, I've actually given him a little drop of lavender right on his back. It helps him to fall asleep too. So if pets or other loved ones are having difficulty sleeping, even diffusing lavender or using it for them too can help out. So for a recap on using ketosis for sleep, if you're someone who's had a chronic problem not being able to get to sleep and you're still using like a standard American diet, or you've made adjustments and you've done something like a paleo diet, but you haven't yet looked at the quantities of what you're eating, then adding in ketosis might actually help. So I hope you found the information valuable tonight. We're going to open it up for questions, and we're going to turn off from YouTube and from Facebook Live. If Julia can find the buttons. Do you want me to help? Okay. Logged out. Oh, here, share. Let's just select something. Oh, here, X.